Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Join Shy. It used to be called the Ask Shy. I'm kind of toying around, changing the name around, seeing what works, what doesn't work. We'll see. Um, Thank you for joining the show today. This is a generally weekly, bi-weekly stream I do really to share my opinions, perspectives, examples, things I come across in the Web3 and blockchain space. I feel very fortunate. I have the wonderful opportunity of working with a lot of awesome builders in the space across Web 2 and Web 3, enterprises, SMBs, and partners, and all these really cool ecosystem that I built around the years. And I like sharing all the cool stories I have and experiences I have. So this is the show that I do that. The other part of the goal is I want to build my content of library, my library of content, and be able to share it out there with the world. So that eventually, when we have clones running around, there will eventually be a clone of me, and at least it will be based off of my content and not some sort of imagination that the AI had to figure out in between. So this is my fun way of getting a lot of the thoughts in my head out there. And if there's any content that people want to see and ask, or people want to see on the show, please do let me know. You can follow me at any of the links below here. YouTube, you got LinkedIn, where I post most of the time. Some stuff goes on Twitter. And you have my website there, and then join the Discord as well. For a bit of background on myself, I've been in IT for 28 years now, 29 or so. Started off in my early days building web design, websites for mostly studio card companies and audio stores in the Los Angeles region when I was younger. And then went into the military and then continued my IT career through there. Since today's show is about partnerships, we're going to talk about identifying partners and how to navigate the Web3 space. I want to show them my background as it relates to the partner landscape. And so my belief about partnerships really goes very early. Right? My father had always taught me the lesson that you can't do anything alone, that in order to be successful, you really have to build a network. You have to build relationships. You have to build communication, and you have to earn trust with the people around you. That relationships are much more long term, whereas partnerships are much more transactional. So when I talk about partnerships, I often think of them in much more of a context of a long term relationship. My father always instilled the idea, and then I agree that you don't directly sell. It's about indirect and indirectly inspiring people, that people should be empowered to do the things that they want to do. So very much in a partnership, in a relationship, the other side should be inspired to work with you as much as you are inspired to work with them. And that's hard. That's intrinsic motivation. It's a challenge. You have to find out what makes that person burn and what gets them excited. And it's a long process, right? You're not in it for the short term. That is usually more of the sales cycle, right? So relationship building is fun. It's a challenge. It requires an art of balance, a respect of privacy, versus transparency and publicity. And an early story I have when I was first building my career in web design and starting to build out, I had went to my father and I said, I really want to build web pages. And my father had asked me, well, who do you want to build it for? Right? You can't just build it for anybody. Who do you want? Who's your target market? Um, and I had said, well, I grew up in Los Angeles. I was very inspired by music. I said, I want to work with musicians. I think they're cool people. I watch MTV and VH1. I really like everything about musicians. And so that was my target market at the time as a teenager. And my dad asked me a simple question. Well, do you know any musicians? And the answer was no. Um, when I replied no, he immediately corrected me and said, well, that's not entirely true. He reminded me how I hung out at the Sam Ash type of music stores. I spent time at the electronic stores, usually in the music departments. Um, and I would go to record shops a lot, right? At the time, that's you buy records, records, CDs. I'd hang out in those places. And the car audio shops were another big thing, right? We had a lot of family members that were relatives or friends that were in the automotive industry, and other people that we knew that owned specifically car audio shops. And my dad made the simple point that we have one path and avenues: go sell directly to the target market, go directly find the artist and sell to them, or build the relationships and nurture those relationships over time and earn the trust with those people and show the people what you can do. And because you show them what they can do, when they run into those musicians and they know musicians need websites, they will then refer them to you. And that's the best kind of opportunity, is when somebody else knows what you do and they can identify somebody else's problem and they can connect you too, right? So you effectively scale out your impact because of the network that you build and because of the clear communication and transparency that you build. So I continued that throughout my career, going through my time at AmeriGas, for example, was when I got to dig into a lot of partnerships. Working in the Pennsylvania region, it's a wonderful thing, and I love about this area is it's about building connections. That's why they call it Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Right? The idea is building those connections, building those relationships, nurturing those. And then I got to do a lot of that within AmeriGas and throughout my roles at AWS, as I went through various technology leadership roles. I continue to build practices and partnerships within the region. And it's a really wonderful thing to do. And so let's jump into the discussion for today. I'm keeping an eye here on the chat if any live questions come in, as well as just the material here. I will take breaks in between just to pause, and then I have the timer here as well. So we'll set a 5-minute timer. If you have any content, again, anything that you want to share, please follow the links below. Otherwise, let's get into it. So we'll start with the first topic around really identifying partners. When you want to identify partners, right, and you're thinking about how do you go out there, an important thing to first think about is why. What's the purpose of this? Why are you even doing this exercise, right? The purpose of partnerships and relationships is about shared visibility, shared validity, right? It's visibility and validity. That's kind of what everybody wants in a partnership, right? You want to validate that what you're building is useful. It's needed in the real world. There's other people that want to use it. If other people use it or they break it, that tells you what works and what doesn't work, right? It validates or invalidates your product. It invalidates or validates your strategy, right? So people are looking for that validation. Once they achieve that validation, or sometimes also invalidation, we'll talk about sharing mistakes and failures along the way. Once you achieve that validation, it's about that visibility, right? How do you share that in the ecosystem? How do you share that with the rest of the world? How do you help people understand not so much what you did, but how you did it, right? And also the why is important, right? Why you did it in the first place. So a lot of things that we're going to talk about today in today's show are going to be around these concepts of visibility and validity, building the long-term indirect relationships and partnerships, really relying on that intrinsic motivation. So when you think about the ecosystem and prospecting in those, right? One of the important things, if you're looking for that validity, remember I said it's a shared visibility and validity. So you're looking at shared validity because you're looking at the tech stack that you have, you're looking at the business stack that you have, you're looking at what partnership opportunities are there in that stack. That's a bit of market research in a sense, right? You're looking at all the tools that you use. Are you using AWS? Are you using different other cloud services? Are you using layer ones or layer twos? Are you using wallet providers or custody providers in your stack? Are you leveraging any SDKs or open source libraries in your stack, right? And then you have the whole business partnership sides, right? Things like Notion, Slack, just everyday tools that you use that are part of your normal business process automation and business operations. Those are also partnership opportunities, right? They want to hear the stories about how their tools are helping you do your business better and build your partnership better. So partnerships and relationship opportunities exist everywhere. The way that you find that is with that external market research, but also the internal market research. You have to understand what your product teams are building, what the engineers are building, where the roadmap is going, what mistakes they're making, what mistakes they're not making. And once you understand that, you can build your strategy based on that as well, right? You can move partners and relationships in and out in the long term as they make sense and align with that roadmap. And it's a challenge. Again, that's why I said it's a balance and an art, because you're trying to maintain the long-term relationships, even with full transparency that there's no short-term fruitful value, right? It's just sometimes being blunt and honest, right? There's no alignment today, but we know alignment will come as we build X, Y, and Z out. So when you look at your partners, once you have that list of partners that are in your ecosystem that you already work with, maybe the ones that you want to work with come out of that too, right? If you've identified your layer one, your layer two, right, some of your foundational infrastructure, but you still need additional security services, you still need some additional analytics services. A good way to find those partners is also by looking at their strengths, right? You want to understand what partners can address gaps that you have in your architecture, in your business products, in your business stack, your operations. Where are these partners that can address these needs that you have, right? These gaps that you have. The other way to also look at it is from a different angle. It's what partners do you have that you have gaps that they can fill. So you're trying to balance both the addressing a partner's strengths and also sometimes addressing a partner's challenges. If you can find a partner that has both, that's a great opportunity. When we talk about low-level libraries, that's a great example, right? A library like LangChain or LangFlow, a layer one solution like Ethereum, for example, that's open source, or any other sort of obfuscation tooling. Web3 auth is an example, right? So any other sort of SDK or package, their strength is that they do one thing very well. Their gap is that they only do that one thing really well. So it's very hard for them to find other players in the market. It's hard for them to grow their ecosystem. It's harder for them to find um, others to partner with and build with. You being one of those partners, right? That leverages a tool in their stack or not. You can also address that gap for them, right? If you have connections in the ecosystem, if you're a development shop, for example, and you're partnering with a marketing company. Well, marketing company doesn't have development resources, and the development resource company generally doesn't have may not have very strong marketing resources. So again, partnership opportunity there, right? But even let's say the development shop has a really good marketing team. Does that marketing team know how to cater towards the Web3? Do they know how to cater towards the Bitcoin maximists or the Ethereum maximists or the Avalanche, Solana, Phantom Knee, or any one of those um, ecosystems, right? Do they know how to talk about those? Do they know how to address those gaps? So that's what we're looking is we want to align with partner strengths. We want to align with the partner weaknesses. And ideally, we want to be able to tell the story about how we can bring those two together, right? So that's something that's a challenge to think about, right? It's a strategic piece that you have to take time. Um, Depending on the size, the part of what you're doing, generally this is an exercise of about a month, maybe less. Again, you're really trying to understand the internal environment. You're trying to understand everything that's built today. You're looking at everything that's there today and where are those partnership opportunities, right? You're peeling apart the entire stack and you're looking for all those collaboration opportunities. You're not looking to replace an existing collaboration, right? Because you don't want to throw everything off. What you're trying to look at is also potentials for um, combining opportunities, right? Maybe you have multiple overlaps in the partners that you use, and there's a better opportunity to leverage a partner solution in this other area that you're not using them. So again, that kind of gap and that research analysis really helps get an understanding of your partners and that partner landscape. Let's talk about a little more about addressing the partner's challenges. Because one thing I want to call out is that you're not selling to the partner per se, right? That's not the intention. Um, it's very easy to you're developing a product. I don't say it's a game, and you look at your Web3 game and you say, okay, who are the partners that I can sell to if I have some sort of a B2B solution, right? Let's say you're building a flat out game and part of your game has a marketplace component to it. And so you want to be able to sell that marketplace component and that reusability of the marketplace to other partners, right? Other game developers, other game studios, other um, game VCs and investors, right? Other marketplaces, because you want to encourage that collaboration. But if you're charging a fee either by a token, right? There's some sort of token that has to get exchanged, or you're just charging based on APIs, and there's API calls, and it's a certain amount of dollars per API calls. You're not trying to sell to that partner. That's how you burn a bridge. That's not the point. You're not going to them and saying, "Hey, we have an awesome solution we're trying to sell to you," right? That's a sales function, and that's fine under the sales rule. If you're on the partner side, it's very much a build with approach. You're going to them and you're saying, "Hey, look, we see your solution. We want to learn more about your solution first, and then once you learn more about the solution, you can dig into more about how your product addresses that problem." But you're always coming at it from an angle of building together, right? You're always saying, "Okay, well, you do this really well, I do this really well. Let's go find a customer together that we can address their problem together," right? That's kind of the point of the build together approach here. The shared validity model is that when you're targeting a use case, you're doing it together with another partner, right? And so it's no longer about you complementing them or them complementing you. It's how you both complement each other for the customer. And when you work backwards from the customer, it's very easy also to find where those partnership opportunities are, because you're looking at the customer's goals and where they're trying to get to. You're looking at where your stack is today and how you build things out. And you can potentially see gaps in that, which then means opportunities for new partnerships and relationships. And you kindle those. And again, when you talk to those partners, it's about, hey, we've identified a challenge, we've identified an opportunity in this space, and we want to collaborate and work together to go ahead and address this challenge. All right, let's keep going here. Just put another few minutes on timer. So next one is really around the Web3 partners specifically, and I want to hone in here a lot more in the Web3 side. I mentioned before the build together mentality. There's a concept of power 3, right, where you're going at something, you're doing something together. This is extremely important in the Web3 approach, in the Web3 ecosystem, in the decentralized ethos, because the whole idea is about decentralized trust, right? You don't know who the other people are sometimes. You're building trust on chain, and it's a paradigm shift in the centralized model that we had before. And so if you come at it from the angle of, we can do everything, we are the awesome partner, we can do everything to help you, it doesn't work, because you are a centralized threat to that ecosystem. Sure, you may have a lot of services, you may do a lot of things, you may offer a lot of different opportunities and avenues and stuff like that, but that doesn't work because it's seen as a threat, right? It's seen as kind of that centralized conglomerate, one throat to choke, right? That's a bad thing. It's not what we want in the decentralized in Web3 world. So the idea is much more about building collaboratively with others in the ecosystem. So for example, if you're a layer one, right, it's what other products are in your, not only in your ecosystem. I think that's it's sort of a straightforward one, right? You look at like DeFi, games, insurance products. You look at now the whole decentralized or DePIN things, and you say, okay, what can we do in our ecosystem? That's great, but the challenge more, right, is it's the future of the world is a multi-chain world. So it's not only about what happens in your ecosystem, you have to be aware of what happens in other ecosystems as well. Because what we're talking about in general is the blockchain and Web3 ecosystem. And your goal is to collaborate with the rest of the ecosystem. There's not going to be one chain to rule it all. There could be one chain that does some things really well for a while, and then some other chain comes along, or not, right? I mean, AWS has been around for a long time. GCP and Azure have certainly tried. Many other cloud providers have tried along the way and they failed. So very likely we will see the same pattern in the Web3 space, right? You're going to have multiple chains. And because of that multi-chain architecture and future world, you have to understand what exists in other ecosystems. And you're not trying to suck TVL from another ecosystem to bring it over to yours. That's a very short-term goal as well. The idea is you may be looking at other ecosystem and you're looking at where are the collaborative opportunities, where a game can maybe span two different types of networks and take advantage of both networks, right? So it's, if I'm in a layer two, for example, it's how do I complement the underlying Ethereum layer one, right? What value am I adding on top of that, right? Transaction finality, speed, cost efficiency, stuff like that. If you're a layer one and you're not competing again with another layer one because it's an open ecosystem, but there's another layer one out there. The idea is, how can you collaboratively build together, right? Is there something that you do really well on your chain? Is there something that they do really well on their chain? Is there an opportunity to bring those two together to address a certain problem that a customer might have? That's a wonderful thing to be able to do. It's not easy. It is hard, but that's the goal, right? And if it's not layer one with other layer ones, then it's a layer one with other developer tooling, right? Other products in the developer tooling stack. The I like to call the core layer is the layer ones, layer twos, the foundational infrastructure. You have the value add, or the ones that add value to that underlying layer. So those are going to be toolings like your data and analytics, your developer tooling, your wallet providers, your kind of no code, low code, no code, low code development tooling. Those are going to be the value add services. And then you have complementary, kind of the ones that hide the blockchain stuff in the background. So you want to understand those partners, and you want to understand how to build that mutual trust with those partners. Um, Again, I'll finalize that the cold calling does not work. Cold emailing does not work. You can't bang on doors here. The idea is about building those long-term partnerships and relationships, and out of those will come fruitful opportunities. That's the really important thing to think about. The other part is it's about learning from challenges, right? As you go through a partnership, things may work and things may not work. You may make mistakes. That's okay, right? Those mistakes are opportunities to learn, maybe an opportunity to bring in a third partner. It's also an option, right? If you made a mistake and you now you can fill that gap with another partner, you now have three of you can go together. We'll talk about marketing later and the power of three. But that gives you the opportunity to go and do that. Or you improve together, right? One of the partners, whichever one aligns best, addresses those challenges. Maybe it's in the development side, they need to add additional development skill sets. Maybe it's more on the marketing side, and they need to add more specific marketing skill sets for the specific market or demographic they're going after. So those things are important to keep in mind. The other thing, the the other key part in the Web3 ecosystem and ethos is really around community and keeping your ear to the ground and understanding what the community is and what's going on. What are builders doing? What are users looking for? Where is the ecosystem going after? And you have to implement feedback loops along the entire way, right? We'll talk about KPIs in a moment, but you want to involve feedback opportunities along the way. So every time that you engage in a partnership, where is that opportunity to get that feedback from them? As you're listening to the community, how are you collecting that feedback from them? Just listening to Discord is not really efficient. Sucking all the data from Discord into an analytics tool certainly works, but engaging with the community works much better, right? Posting content, seeing how people react to that content, having many community events and discussions and live shows and sessions and polls, and all these engagement methods are how you gauge the community's interaction. AMAs. The idea is to get that integration, right? The Telegram and sort of Discords tend to be noisy, right? And the people that tend to complain tend to be the loudest. So you have to balance out the noise in the community and make sure that is not poisoning your perspective, because the reality may be, for example, that the um, the reality is that the partner I just lost it. So you got to listen to the community, get to that bottom line there. So I was just distracted with the question there. Somebody just jumped into YouTube. So I'll get to the questions in a moment here because there's some questions about coding. So I'll get to that in a moment here. Um, again, that feedback in the life cycle is important. Offer again methods for collecting the feedback, right? That's what we're talking about, AMAs and events and stuff like that. We'll talk about events being more programs, right? And much more of a structure around events, not just doing events for events in a moment. As you're going through that, um, you want to develop additional mechanisms or means to be able to gain that community feedback. So if you find yourself that your community is struggling and it's not picking up, the question is often, how do you improve that community and how do you grow that community out? And if you're stagnating, the answer isn't always more noise, right? I often find that founders will say they're not getting the marketing traction that they're expecting in their channels and stuff like that. How do they get that message out there, right? How do they gain more traction? Should they spam the market? What should they do? That's not really the goal, right? The idea, especially in the Web3 ethos, is understanding where your customers are hanging out, right? The people that have your problems, what communities are they hanging out in? Um, so if you're solving, for example, a developer tooling issue, you're maybe building a no code solution, or you're building a blockchain network that is very heavily Web 2 centric. It has obfuscation layers already pre-baked and built in um, for social wallets and stuff like that. If you're partnering with those kind of communities, right, the goal is to understand what kind of people are hanging on their communities, right? So are developers going to the wallet communities because they're trying to implement wallet solutions and they're trying to understand how to do custody? Are developers hanging out in any kind of no code, low code communities because they're trying to understand how to leverage those no code solutions? By listening to those communities and adjacent communities that your partners are in, right? So it's not only about your community, it's about listening to the communities of your partners. You can better understand the ecosystem, right? And that's what's important to partners. When you know what the problems are in their world, you can much more empathize with them, what they're doing. You can understand what they're doing, and you can build your 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 approach to helping them that's specific to what they need, as opposed to trying to sell them other stuff that they don't need. So that's the goal about really being part of that community, is being able to listen and have your ear on the ground and communicate that. Okay. Yeah, set the timer on this one for 5 minutes. So I'm not going to go into, when you talk about the legal side of things when it comes to negotiations, right? There's an MSA, right? A master services agreement that kind of overall governs the agreement between the two parties, general terms of service kind of thing. You then have a statement of work, right? That's going to be something maybe you're specifically doing for another partner. You're going to collaborate together. Um, Usually that there's a exchange of funds in that, right? You're doing something collaborative together. Um, when you're looking to partner, right, you're not delivering services to that partner. When you're looking to partner, a letter of intent, a mutual order agreement, right? There's a whole bunch of different names for it. MOA, MOU, LOI, letter of intent, right? Whether they're binding or not binding, that depends on what you're trying to do, your jurisdiction. Um, I'm not going to go into the legal advice there, but the important part is you don't want to overburden the partnership, right? You're not trying to, if you're starting off the relationship with the partner and the idea is you're doing logo sharing, for example, and brand sharing, you don't want to throw the whole MSA at them or whole letter of agreement or intent that talks about 5-year partnership and all the things that you're potentially going to do together. The letter of intent needs to be very clean cut and very simple on what it is that you're trying to do today. Well, you're trying to do logo sharing or brand sharing. That's what it is. You're trying to go to market to events together. You're trying to target customers together, right? That's the idea, is keep the letter of intent very narrowly focused so that it doesn't get overwhelming, and now the letter of intent is really governing the relationship, right? That's not the intention there. The letter of intent and those kind of legal documents are to solidify the agreements or discussions that you've had, and codify them in a legal way. Again, if that's necessary. In the Web3 world, depending on what partner you're working with, sometimes that's frowned upon, right? Depending on the jurisdiction that they're at, if forcibility is a question. So you have to really understand your partner, understand what you're doing, and make sure that that's something you can go down. You want to make sure that you have clear communications with them, right? If there's any sort of costs that are part of the engagement, when you're building events, you're building grant programs, you're building stuff like that. Um, it costs you money to deploy those things, right? Those things are not free. So when you're communicating with your partners, when you're negotiating with your partners, I I believe it's okay to let them know how much those costs are going into these partnerships, right? So that they're aware of what you're bringing to the table. You're communicating clearly with them by saying, what it is that you're looking for, right? That validity, and they are also stating the same thing, right? So because of those clear communications, you're both talking about that validity. You're both trying to validate a real world use case. The discussions go much easier, right? Those negotiations of the terms go much easier as well. When there's, you know, challenges in the partnership, right? Let's say you define a go-to-market strategy and you're going to go after a certain target market, and you may disagree on the segmentation that you're going to go after. That doesn't mean that the partnership is dead, right? And the important part here is that this is a relationship. If it was a partnership, then it's defined, okay, by these specific activities. We do a segmentation. The segmentation doesn't work, then in theory, the partnership is dead. Again, I don't agree to that, because the point is it's about a long-term relationship. So if the segmentation wasn't agreed upon and didn't work, stuff like that, um, then that will be shared out as well, right? It'll be addressed in the future. Um, see if there's any questions here. The content is all recorded. It will be shared as well. Let me get back here to the next section. So as you're going through the process of building out with your partners, as you're working together, as you're collaborating, the important part is to develop the strategies that overcome those challenges, right? And develop them early on, because that will strengthen your bond and your relationship. It'll strengthen the partnership that you have together, because challenges are always going to rise. These problems will always happen. There'll always be some sort of disagreement. There'll always be a differentiation of perspectives, right? And that's okay. That's part of what a relationship is, right? A partnership tends to define a much harder line of collaboration, right? Which again, I don't think really works in the Web3 ecosystem. The partnerships are about fluidity and working together and collaborating. You can have the agreements that specify certain things, but you want to be able to collaborate together and find new strategies together. So when it comes to the successes and the things that you've built out, you want to make sure that you're also sharing those successes. You're sharing the things that you worked on. You're sharing the things that you developed. You may do those through different kinds of events and different kinds of marketing partnerships. But you want to make sure that you find ways to elevate those wins. Also, the challenges that you had, right? If you had a challenge and you eventually overcame it, that's a great opportunity. But if you have a challenge and you're still struggling with it, it's a great opportunity to bring in other partners, right? And so if you share that with your partners, if you are open with what your challenges are, then again, they can find ways to help you. If you ran into a challenge together, right, that's a great way to address those problems and then find a partner to resolve it. Um, Things like success stories, case studies, all these things are beneficial. But the events, I think, is really important. And so let's get into events and let's kind of talk about event planning and organization and all that stuff, and the various important parts of when it comes to events in the Web3 space in general. So events are one-time things, right? When we think about the Web3 space, because we're thinking about a long-term trajectory, it's not about single-time events. The idea is it's about a program. what goal are you trying to achieve? So you're running this program, you're setting up this program, you're doing this thing because you're trying to achieve what goal? And that goal maybe is revenue. That's fine. Ideally, it's if you're looking at relationships and partnerships and you're in that kind of role, it's indirect revenue, right? You're indirectly influencing that revenue. And so you're looking at events much more holistically, right? You're looking at events, how they relate to blog posts, hackathons, grant programs. How do all these things relate to each other, right? So if you have a success story, somebody builds something really cool on your platform, or you are building something really cool on their platform, you want to be able to go to market with that together. So you may do an event together, you may do a blog post together, you may do a smaller hackathon together, you may do a webinar together, right? There's lots of things that can be done. And that's the important part of a relationship, is it's about sharing that out. And the events are not just solely for the purpose of going to an event and selling what you're doing, right? The events are about sharing those stories. You want to find the opportunities to get on stage with your partner, right? You want to ideally find opportunities where you can share the partner's story, because that is how you bring in the much bigger revenue, because you're able to drive much bigger impact, because you're not just selling to one customer, you're not just selling to one audience, you're sharing a story to an audience that will then sell for you, right? They're going to share that story with others and communicate with others and talk about those things. So the program aspect, right? It's important to always think about how do you share that content and uh, breathe more life into that content, so to speak. Specifically on hackathons and venturethons, I guess kind of any build-a-thon, so to speak. My belief is that those are great opportunities to bring people together. We need to go back to focusing on that collaborative approach, right? That's really important, is to focus on that collaborative approach. In the investment side of things, right? The hackathons and venturethons are often used to find opportunities for investment, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the focus of the event, right? Because that drives bad behavior sometimes, right? Because what builders would do in those events is they look for what is the quickest path to revenue. And if they have a good business development team, if they have a good business side, they may be able to uncover that really quickly, whereas the product laggards behind. So my belief is that the important part is to find a balance in those events, right? How do you encourage the business side as well as the tech side? If you're hosting and you're sponsoring hackathons and you're sponsoring things like venturethons, your goal is to educate. You're not there to sell things. You're there to educate and be a mentor and help accelerate those products. You're looking at the ecosystem that's there, and you're looking at the potential to your ecosystem, right? Because the products and the things that are being built out there are going to eventually possibly be on your ecosystem. So you're not trying to sell to them, right? If you come to them with a much more mentorship or teacher approach, and you're looking to solve their challenges when they need to deploy on mainnet, when they need to go into production, they will know that you were the ones that helped them, and they will know that they have something there to help them as they continue to scale and grow. And that to me is the best way to form that long-term relationship, right? It's that long-term partnership and relationship that fruits things for long-term, for a lot of opportunities down the road. When you're doing any of these events, right, the KPIs are really important. You don't have to have like a very long and exhaustive list of KPIs where you have every single metric possibly figured out. How many people walk through the door, how many people enter each event, how many people leave the event, how long did they stay at the event. The you just need to know how many people were there, right, and how effective those sessions are. That's kind of the most important thing, is how effective were the sessions that you did. If there were 1,000 people there and 100 of them end up going and deploying the solution, that's great. But if 100 of them told 10 of their friends, well, that's now 1,000 friends that know about the solution as well. So that's what you're trying to track, right? And it's a challenge, because that's not always apparent and obvious, right? So that sometimes it's things through like referral programs. It may be through newsletters and other marketing opportunities that you may have. It may be through hackathons where you're encouraging collaboration amongst you want to look at those KPIs, and once you establish them, and again, they can be very simplistic, right? We're going to host an event, and our goal is to get 30 people in the door. Out of those 30 people in the door, we want to make sure that we get 10 good ideas, and out of those 10 good ideas, one of them will move on to the next stage. So when you're setting up those KPIs and you're setting up that structure, the goal is to be able to understand your existing segment, right? So you're going to market this program to your existing segment because you're trying to expand your segment. Again, you're not selling them on the program, right? If you have this incubation program that you built, whether it's built or going to be built, right? You're trying to get builders into that incubation program. So you're not trying to sell them on it, right? You're trying to show them the value, right? And you're trying to show them how that's going to accelerate what they're building, how they're going to get more partnerships out of those relationships. And you want to expand your connections with those founders and those builders, right? You want to help them because they will help you connect with other founders and builders in the space as well. So again, it's about that mutual relationship. So you look at the existing segment that you have and you look at how to expand that. You then look at new market expansions, right? So you have existing partnerships. That's already done. You're doing really well with events, stuff like that. But you want to go after new markets. Let's say your product is now building a solution for the construction industry, and which partners are in the space, right? Which partners are complementary to that space? How do they help accelerate your product to market? And how can you accelerate their product to market? Again, it's a mutual benefit, right? There's a goal there to that mutual visibility and validity. You want to find the opportunity for growth for both parties in any of the events that you host, right? So when you're doing, for example, an event, it's not just about we're going to have a bunch of one-on-one mentor sessions or AMAs, right? It's about panels. It's about showing it's about sharing the partner stories in your ecosystem. So that's something that's really important to leverage, right? Because you want to leverage your partners, you want to showcase the community's work, and you want to showcase the collaboration that happened in your ecosystem. It's not so much about the product in the ecosystem, it's about the collaboration and that energy that's in your ecosystem. Because if you show that there is that fuel and that fire and that passion, then people can see that there's a home for a long time. It's not just a transactional environment. It's not just a one-time thing you're going to do. All right, let's just look for some last questions here. We'll wrap up. If you've hung on this long in the show, thank you very much for hanging on the full 45 minutes or so. Again, it's a show where I generally talk about topics and ideas that I have on mind. In this case, we're talking about partnerships in the Web3 space. Please visit the Discord link down here, or LinkedIn or Twitter, any of those, and YouTube. And look for more episodes to come every week. The final segment we're going to talk about or so here is around really grant programs. I think the important part in the grant programs is it's an opportunity for partnerships. It's an opportunity to grow your ecosystem, and partnership doesn't mean always that somebody's going to bring you direct revenue right away. So a grant program where you are bringing somebody into your ecosystem and you're building it because you're trying to nurture them and you want their solution to grow in your ecosystem, you're doing so because you know that long term down the road, they're going to bring partners and new players into your ecosystem as well that are also going to help you grow. So you don't want more Me Too's, right? If you have a lot of DeFi protocols in your ecosystem, you don't want necessarily more DeFi protocols because you're going to have a good set of partners there. You'll establish that base pretty well. And there's no need to continue to grow that partnership out if that's already well established. Again, the partnership program will take care of that, right? That's why you have a partner lead, or you have something in that partnership role, because they're doing that. That's not part of the grand strategy. The grand strategy, when you're thinking about partnerships, is more about opening up doors in segments that you're not part of. So how do you leverage the grant to bring in new partners in new areas, right? So if you're very weak on, again, construction, real world projects in your ecosystem, maybe that's an opportunity to go after, right? Maybe that's an opportunity to bring protocols that have those relationships, because the partners that do construction, right? For example, if you're trying to get a big um, manufacturing company like John Deere or Caterpillar, for example, to do something on your network with IoT devices, you can certainly go after them and sell them directly. But if you bring on a, even one or two agriculture type of solutions, agritech, or any kind of solutions that would then show those agricultural companies, right? Or if we're talking about construction, right? You talk about any construction kind of uses, so real estate type use cases, right? You if you are able to show that you have those users already on board, then those partners would be more interested in collaborating and working, right? Because again, they're going to look at your ecosystem and they're going to say, okay, you have these protocols that are related to real estate. You have these protocols that are related to other construction use cases and other educational type of use cases. And so as a partner, we want to also play in your ecosystem. So the grant programs can be a great way to enable new partnership opportunities and new partnership streams that then enable growth in the ecosystem. So it's kind of a more holistic thought about it, as opposed to just taking the grants and saying, hey, we're going to launch a grant program and here's the funding and here's the categories that we're looking for investments in, and that's it, right? That's a good start, but it's a much more holistic plan of how the ecosystem feeds itself, and you ultimately get more and more benefits from doing one thing, right? So again, just all about impact. Last thing we'll wrap up is finally, I'll just close up with the visibility part. Always work to collaborate together, right? It's very easy when you have a two or three partners in the mix that are working together and collaborating. Each one of them may have their marketing and PR departments, and it's a great opportunity to get a joint blog post out, get that joint validity out. So anytime that you're building something, if you're a builder, if you're an engineer, and you're working on these projects and you're aware of these partnerships, it's a great opportunity for you to share what you're working on with the partner and the partner ecosystem and your partner manager. And maybe you have partner alliance lead in your company that's handling that, because one of the biggest challenges is finding content to share at these events, right? If you're hosting a hackathon, if you're hosting a virtual-thon, if you're hosting a venture-thon, sorry, a meetup a night, hosting the event and setting up the event, that's okay. There's a challenge there in marketing and event logistics, but the content is usually one of the hardest things, right? Because if you have good content, you're going to attract good visitors, you're going to attract repeat eyeballs and all this good stuff. If you don't have good content, then things fall apart. So if you are a builder in the space, if you're building something, remember that the content and the stuff that you have is extremely valuable to anybody that's in a marketing role that is looking for content, right? You're building something that works, right? You can show what actually works. And so I highly encourage that if you're a builder in a company or an organization, do not hesitate. It's a great opportunity to work with your partner alliance leads, with your partner managers, and find out where those opportunities to accelerate a partner and build with them, because ultimately that's going to accelerate you in the ecosystem as well in return. So I'll go ahead and end on that note. Thank you to whoever joined the show, a couple of viewers and on. Anybody that watches in the live stream, thank you for joining. Please follow the links below and join into more content. If you're curious to see anything specific as well, please drop that in the comments or the notes below. And thank you very much for joining the show. So everybody, have a great Friday.